Welcome, everyone. Now, shares in some of the biggest European car makers moved lower on Thursday, February 27th, after U.S. President Donald Trump floated a 25% quote-unquote reciprocal tariff on European cars and other goods. Earlier, Trump said, "We've made a decision and we'll be announcing it very soon, and it will be 25%, generally speaking, and that will be on all cars and all things." Now, the European Union says it is prepared to take swift and decisive action immediately against what it called unjustified barriers to free and fair trade in response. Now, the Trump administration's global tariff regime, now covering China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union, and its ramifications on the current economic and political order, is the subject of today's Spotlight program. And now for a quick report.
We've been tariffed.
U.S. President Donald Trump says that he is not stopping the planned tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. Trump has announced that effective April 2nd, the U.S. will impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. The decision comes despite previous delays and ongoing negotiations.
We've lost millions of people due to fentanyl. It comes mostly from China, but it comes through Mexico and it comes through Canada. And I have to tell you that, on April 2nd, I was going to do it on April 1st, but I'm a little bit superstitious, so I made it April 2nd. The tariffs go on, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think you're going to see something that's going to be amazing. We've been taken advantage of as a country for a long period of time. We've been tariffed.
The European Union is also in the administration's crosshairs. President Trump has declared a forthcoming 25% tariff on European cars and other goods, accusing the EU of unfair trade practices.
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%, generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all other things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them. And we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union.
But the affected countries have not stayed silent against Trump's trade war. The European Union has already promised to respond firmly and immediately to any unjustified trade barriers. Canada and Mexico have responded with retaliatory tariffs on American products, targeting key industries. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has warned that these tariffs will hurt American businesses just as much as they hurt Canadian ones. China has also hit back, imposing tariffs on U.S. goods and energy, including a 15% tax on imports of U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas. Alarm bells are going off around the world. Countries are concerned that Trump's one-for-one tariff plan would threaten the global economy. Experts warn that these tariffs could lead to increased prices for consumers and cause great uncertainty for businesses.
Relating to events that occurred on January.
And now for our guests. Joining us is Mr. E. Michael Jones, Executive Intelligence Review from Indiana. And Eric Wahlberg, author and journalist, joining us from Toronto, Canada. Gentlemen, welcome to the program, both of you. Hope you're both doing well. And I guess, Mr. E. Michael Jones, we'll start with you, if we could. 25% tariffs on your European allies. Perhaps many may see this as no joke, similar to the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Good or bad, sir, for America, its security, its economy, and its future?
Yes. First of all, I'm editor of Culture Wars magazine. Yes, the tariffs were the basis of our economy. The United States of America started off with a government that was funded by tariffs. The tariffs served two purposes. It funded the government, but it also protected American manufacturers from England, which was the predatory country that could undercut everyone's prices at that time. After World War II, America emerged from that war with 60% of the world's manufacturing power at its disposal. At that point, they decided they were for free trade, exactly the way the English did when they had overwhelming manufacturing power. The real crisis came in the 1980s with the era of leveraged buyouts. which is basically when Wall Street decided to put all of American manufacturing on the chopping block. They sold it off to the highest bidder, and they outsourced most of our manufacturing capacity to China. So now, how are you going to put the genie back in the bottle? Well, I mean, tariffs do protect manufacturing. Whether they're going to build up immediately, Trump is committed to America first when it comes to American manufacturing. So maybe this will help, but it may just be a bargaining chip. I think when you're talking about Mexico, I think what happened there is it was a threat, and President Sheinbaum responded by capitulating to the threat, and he withdrew the tariff. The threat was basically to get the cartels to stop sending people across the border. So, but if you're talking about Germany, you're talking about a completely different situation. Okay. For the crucial thing that happened to Germany during the Biden administration is that Joe Biden blew up their pipeline. This was their source of cheap energy from Russia. Olaf Scholz accepted that. Okay, now the new regime comes in, and Trump is going to impose tariffs. That will break Germany. Germany is barely surviving right now because they no longer have cheap energy. Their cars are too expensive. If they get a 25% tariff on those cars, that will break the German economy, and that will end NATO. So I think that that's a positive development. The United States is on the brink. Trump is on the brink of pulling out of NATO because he thinks it's too expensive. Trump is a guy who works according to the bottom line, and I think he's ready to pull out of NATO. This will only encourage Germany. Germany will have to pull out of NATO if these tariffs remain.
All right. Thank you for your initial thoughts, sir. And Mr. Eric Wahlberg, welcome to the conversation. Your thoughts, please, on Trump's Mexico, Canada, and China tariffs regime now encompassing the European markets and some of America's closest allies there in the European Union.
Trump is living in the 19th century. The idea of using tariffs now is really it's far too late to introduce to reintroduce tariffs as a way of organizing economic life. Well, the unintended consequences are unintended. We have no idea really what's going to happen. The butterfly theory, you make a butterfly moves and it affects the whole world. These are not butterflies. The tariffs are huge. What it's doing is it's basically forcing a reevaluation of the American dollar in order to give it more imports and to give it more exports and to reduce the imports. So in a way, it's kind of an evaluation upward. So what it's doing is it's going to lower the value of all the other currencies around. And really, I don't know what, I think it's going to end up with a recession around the world. And even in the U.S., because it will not be able to trade, its trade partners are gone. It will only be able to rely on domestic demand. And China can do that, but the U.S. has already written off its production. In order to make the tariffs work for you, you would have to have a program of state-sponsored rebuilding of manufacturing. You'd have to be subsidizing corporations, but none of that's ready. And other countries are looking. They say, "Oh, the U.S. every 4 years someone changes, so what's the point of?" And producers, they'll think, "Okay, we have 4 years to build up production. What happens if the Democrats come back in and reverse the tariffs and we lose all our production?" So I think that it's going to create a paralysis, really, in the U.S. and for the non-planned economies like Canada and Europe as well. The governments are going to have either rush to immediately instigate a whole program of building local production, or if they don't do anything, they're just going to be voted out. So China is fine. China, because it can control the market, it can make adjustments as needed over time, but the rest of the world is not. So this is really going to help China because China is the only country that it has a stability within its planned system to prevent layoffs and economic collapse.
And that's an interesting point there by Mr. Wahlberg. I want to put to you, Mr. E. Michael Jones. Many say this that in the short term, these tariffs are going to hurt the American consumer. They may raise taxes, they may raise inflation. In the long term, they will benefit the U.S. Markets. But the only problem, it goes back to exactly what Mr. Wahlberg was saying, we never see continuity between U.S. presidents. We see exactly the opposite, a lot of polarization. This will only work if the next 2 or 3 U.S. presidents respect Donald Trump's policies and continue them.
I think we have to factor in another idea here. We are at the end of America's third republic. No republic in America has lasted more than 80 years. The first republic began in 1781. It ended with the Civil War in 1861. The second republic began in 1865. It ended with World War II in 1945. And this republic is now 80 years old. It's coming to an end. So we're basically talking about a massive geopolitical rearrangement that has to take place in order to correspond to reality. And the reality is that Germany has technology and no energy, and Russia has energy and very little technology. That is going to happen. What Trump is doing is driving Germany into the arms of Russia. This is a fundamental violation of the Mackinder thesis, which is the fundamental law of geopolitics for the Anglo-American empire, which is basically you have to divide the Eurasian landmass. Trump is now bringing the Eurasian landmass together by bringing Germany, throwing Germany into the arms of Russia. That will lead to a world that is different than the world that we're in right now. But, this world is coming to an end. The United States cannot sustain a worldwide empire anymore. They cannot do it. And one manifestation of this is unleashing Elon Musk to basically take a butcher knife to the budget and just eliminate entire organizations like USAID. There's going to have to be a retrenchment. And the first retrenchment should be withdrawing from all 300 bases throughout the world. Trump has a contradictory program. It's basically make America first with manufacturing, but at the same time, tariffs, no income tax, we're even talking about that, but at the same time, maintain the American empire. That's a contradictory program that cannot succeed.
And interesting take, Mr. Jones, thank you. And Eric, Trump said the European Union was created, he had literally said this, to screw the United States. Okay, and I want to take this, if we can, this conversation beyond just trade, because there are political and military arrangements between Donald Trump, between the U.S. and the Europeans that are going to get impacted through this rift. You heard Mr. E. Michael Jones mention NATO. Donald Trump has been complaining about NATO spending, that the Europeans aren't basically fulfilling their share of supporting NATO. He's warmed up to the Russians somewhat to put an end to the war in Ukraine, to the chagrin of the Europeans, the way he's left out them and Kiev in the process. So this goes a lot farther than simple trade and tariffs. It just seems like to be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to tensions on the horizon and geopolitical rearrangements, the way Mr. E. Michael Jones put it.
I agree with Mr. Jones on this issue of you cannot have a good, productive economy and at the same time have a huge military industrial complex that's weighing you down, preventing you basically from making your economy work productively in the producing goods for people to buy and sell and use. Military industrial complex is just a huge black hole. It sucks all the energy, and then eventually you can use the bombs, maybe like in Ukraine, and you can blow them up and then produce more bombs. So all you're doing is sucking energy out of the real economy in order to produce this huge military machine. And you've got to, it looks like Trump wants to go after the Pentagon, but at the same time, he's got his own personal agenda, and he wants to redirect Pentagon spending into his own fiefdom. I dread to think what he has in his own personal plans for the Pentagon. But that's the problem is you've got to really reduce the in spending. But again, Trump, he has some agreement with Putin that they will cut military spending in half. I mean, that China immediately said, forget us. We have a very neat and clean military. We're not going to cut anything. And of course, Russia has its military is tiny. So I don't know how Trump expects them to even reduce further. But of course, the U.S. could get rid of half of its military spending if it wanted to. But there's just too many entrenched interests. Whether or not, as E. Michael Jones said, the U.S. has run down its last energy of this 80-year cyclical period, and it's got to launch a new vision for itself. Trump seems to be trying to do this, but it's such a chaotic vision. And at the same time, when you've cut all of your productive ability of your economy over the last 20 years, you've given it away to China, you've got to get it back. And there's no planning. The only thing that Trump's done so far, really, is he's cut further all taxes on the rich. He did that in the first term, and now he's finishing that. So he's done that, which will create a huge deficit, and is doing nothing to correct the productive ability of the U.S. economy. It's chaos.
Well, you know, it's funny that in that first term, Donald Trump imposed tariffs on the Chinese. And then Joe Biden, when he was running for president, he lambasted Trump for those, and he said that they're asinine, he's going to put an end to them, they're horrible for the American consumer, horrible for the American market. And guess what, Mr. E. Michael Jones? He kept them in place as president. Just like immigration, he followed right through with Donald Trump's policies. He actually even added to the tariffs an additional $18 billion on Chinese semiconductors and whatnot and electronics in May of last year. So why do we see continuity when these U.S. presidents from the opposing sides of the aisle act like they're so polarized in the process of getting into office?
There is a consensus among the military-industrial complex that China is a threat because China has a bigger economy than America right now. And there's a tacit admission here that labor is the source of all value. And so if you're manufacturing, you're creating value in a way that you're not when you're shuffling debt, which is what Wall Street does all the time. But the contradiction at the heart of the Trump administration is the Jewish question. In other words, we're going to eliminate foreign aid except when it comes to Israel. We are going to make peace except when it comes to Israel. We are going to be against censorship, which is Judge J.D. Vance said in Munich, to the shock of all the people there, except when it comes to America, where the ADL is the group running censorship. This is the fundamental contradiction that Trump is avoiding. And he's not going to be able to avoid it because it's going to wreck his administration.
And then, Mr. Eric Wahlberg, you know, many of the undertones here is that the U.S., and not just undertones, overtones as well. Donald Trump says the U.S. has been the victim of unfair trade practices for years, especially when it comes to the Europeans. But then one can argue that the U.S. also dictates and has dictated since the Second World War to the Europeans on what to do politically, militarily. So when you are asking for an equal playing field with the Europeans as the White House, isn't that kind of a give in a decline of your imperialist control over those vassal states?
Well, we talk about vassal states, but really since World War II, the Marshall Plan, basically Europe was incorporated into the American economy. And then together they grew, and Canada as well, and to a lesser extent Latin America, but it's basically the so-called collective West. as basically the old colonial power, the old white settler colonies and the empires, the British and American, the Dutch, whatever empires, they all work together. And that's why you have NATO, that's why you have the EU and all of these trade agreements, the World Trade Organization. The whole system was built up around the U.S., with the U.S. Basically assuring these economies of sustainability through the American dollar. Well, now it's breaking this. It's not really, they're vassals if you look at it in one way, but the whole economy was a network that was tightly controlled and tightly organized. Now it's falling apart. Of course, the U.S. is huge compared to any other country, so it's got ability just to survive, even certainly in the short term, and to readjust over time because it's big enough to not to fall, not to collapse. It's too big to collapse. But the smaller countries, then now they start to look like vassals because they agree to be part of this system. So really, it's wrong to just say they're vassals. The whole system's collapsing. So the U.S. will suffer as well, not as much as the rest of the collective West, but this really is a collapse of this American Republic of the last 80 years.
I'd really like to put that same question to Mr. E. Michael Jones. Opting for an equal playing field, Mr. E. Michael Jones, with the Europeans, is this in a way you're accepting that your influence over these so-called vassal states, what many people have said for dozens of years, is on the wane?
Yes, it is. It is, because what was the thing that saved Germany? It was the Marshall Plan. Before the Marshall Plan, they had the Morgenthau Plan, which was Jewish vengeance to starve the Germans to death. So once the Marshall Plan came in and money started flowing in, they had the Wirtschaftswunder, which is the economic miracle that brought prosperity back to Germany. They would accept the vassal state to America as long as it guaranteed prosperity in Germany. Biden broke that. He broke that when he blew up the pipeline. He broke that agreement, and therefore they lost the allegiance of the German people when they did that.
Gentlemen, time has gotten the better of us. Thank you both for joining us on the program here. Mr. E. Michael Jones there, editor at Culture Wars Online magazine. We got that right for him. And Mr. Eric Wahlberg, their author and journalist, joining us from Toronto, Canada. And viewers, this brings us to the end of your Press TV Spotlight program. Thank you for tuning in, and bye-bye for now.